Hello and welcome to Calm the Farm podcast, where pharmacy business meets legal wisdom, minus the headache. In each episode, we share practical legal tips and real-life examples to help you run your pharmacy with confidence. I'm your host, Sarah Stoddart. Thanks very much for joining us. Lately, I've been looking at a lot of contracts for pharmacy business transactions. Certainly very busy in that space at the moment. What is becoming very common, though, is for people to have signed offers to purchase before the document comes to us, or draft contracts coming to us where we then go back and try and negotiate, only to be told that it didn't form part of the negotiations and is therefore not agreed. Now, this is problematic when there are provisions that are not given due consideration when someone is making an offer to purchase. Now, maybe that's because they think they can negotiate at a later stage. Maybe it's because they're under pressure when they sign, or maybe it's simply a case of not knowing what they don't know. However, there are a number of clauses that you need to think about when you're entering into a contract, whether you are the buyer or the seller. And buying or selling a pharmacy is a major milestone. So whether it's your first or your fifth deal, the fine print does always matter. Purchase price and settlement date often get the most attention, but there are several other conditions that can have a big impact on the success of your transaction, both legally and practically. A few of the conditions that you should consider before signing on the dotted line are going to be discussed in today's episode. There's three main areas that I'm going to look at today. First is customer accounts and loyalty programs. In today's pharmacy landscape, customer data is gold, but who owns that data can be a grey area. Many pharmacies offer loyalty programs, hold customer accounts, or maintain records for Webster packing and other ongoing services. But who actually owns the data, and what happens to it after settlement? It's important to ensure the sale contract clearly outlines what will happen with customer records and accounts. Will they be transferred to the buyer? Will customers be notified? Is there any restriction on using information post-settlement? It's these sort of questions that are worth sorting out up front, especially when it comes to compliance with privacy laws and continuity of patient care. Now, whilst I wish I had the answers to those questions for you now, it does depend on the terms and conditions that underpin that data and what is set out in the actual customer accounts, terms and conditions, or the loyalty program terms and conditions. If you're a buyer, you need to make sure you're getting what you think you're paying for. If the value of the business relies heavily on customer retention and these sort of accounts and programs, the contract should support a smooth transition for those things. The second area I'm going to look at, and if you're a long-time listener of the podcast, you'll know this is a bit of a favourite topic of mine, and that is employees, but in particular, employee interviews and retention. People make the pharmacy. That's why employee-related clauses are some of the most important parts of any pharmacy transaction. Most buyers want to retain key team members to ensure stability post-settlement. But employment can't just be transferred automatically without consent. There is a process that goes with that. A buyer should be given the opportunity to interview existing staff and offer new employment agreements conditional on the sale proceeding. This allows the buyer to assess whether the team aligns with their expectations and culture. However, interviews are not as of right. That is, a buyer doesn't automatically have a right to interview staff when they sign a contract. So therefore, it needs to be incorporated into the actual conditions. For this area, you need to get clear advice on your obligations and make sure you're not overlooking this step. A smooth handover with a well-informed team can make or break your first months of trading. If you're a seller, then of course there's probably some loyalty to your staff and you want to make sure they're looked after. Otherwise, you might get some not so happy text or phone calls after settlement has occurred. Third and final for this episode is nursing home contracts. If a pharmacy services nursing homes or aged care facilities, those contracts are typically a key part of the business and needed to be treated that way. Some contracts are tied to the pharmacy as an entity, others are personal to the pharmacist or subject to third-party approval before assignment. The contract of sale should clearly deal with these things. As a buyer, you'll want to ensure the nursing home arrangements are valid, transferable, and in place from day one. That might mean a special condition in the contract, making the sale conditional on the transfer of those agreements, or at least consent being granted. Consider too what happens if the nursing home does not agree to the transfer, or if the seller has a competing business in the area and there is a risk that the nursing home might follow them to that business rather than staying with the business you're purchasing. Sellers should also be transparent about any service level expectations or hidden costs in delivering these agreements. Surprises in this space can quickly sour a good deal. Every pharmacy transaction is different, but so are the risks. While it's tempting to focus on the big ticket items like goodwill value or the lease terms, it's often the smaller but critical operational details like customer relationships, staff retention, and third-party contracts that determine whether your transaction feels like a win or feels like a headache. And as you know, this podcast is all about avoiding headaches. Invest time in getting good legal and accounting advice and make sure your contract isn't just boilerplate or rushed. A well-drafted and well-thought-out agreement by people that have experience in the area and get the industry and which reflects the true nature of the business can give both sides confidence, results in a much smoother transaction, and I can almost guarantee you will also result in lower fees. I hope that's been helpful today. I look forward to speaking with you next week.